What's up YouTube, it's the one and only Legend of Winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another video. So as I'm pretty sure a majority of you already know, in my last video I uploaded my 4 biggest surprises in the NBA season, and in this video, as I promised, this is my 4 biggest disappointments in the NBA season. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section below if you feel like I missed anyone, but without further ado, because I do intend this video to be a little bit longer, let's get right into the video.
With Giannis developing at the speed of a meteor, it wouldn't be crazy to see them in the conference finals this year, right?
Coming in at number 4, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, an organization that many people assume was going to take a huge leap in the right direction this year simply due to the amount of talent that's on the roster. And quite frankly, who could blame you? This is an organization that features a superstar talented player in Giannis, some great supporting cast pieces such as Chris Middleton and Malcolm Brogdon, and with the return of Jabari Parker towards the end of the year, it seems as if this is an organization that could really compete with some of the better teams in a weaker Eastern Conference. And if all of that wasn't enough, they went after Eric Bledsoe in the beginning of the season because it seems as if Giannis needed a little bit more help when it comes to the ball handling responsibilities on the team. And here we are now, less than 5 games left in the regular season, and even though yes they are a playoff team, being the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and barely above 500 is something that no one saw coming, which just leads us to the question, what exactly did this team do wrong? Of course, we can look at Giannis as he is the superstar on this team and should continue to develop as an individual player, and his inability to space the floor really hurts his team, especially in a half-court setting. However, he's still roughly, 23, 24 years old, so he may get a pass. I will say this though, Chris Middleton, Thon Maker, and a lot of other supporting cast pieces really fell short this year, and I would even go as far as saying a player such as Thon Maker regressed from where he was last year. But I do believe it is pretty obvious who should receive the most blame for this team, and that is head coach Jason Kidd. And even though Jason Kidd did lose his job early on in the season, I can't help but just think to myself, what type of job of a coach did he do, or the lack of job that he was able to do, for him to have all of these defensive pieces to his disposal, and yet this is one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and it's been that way for nearly the entire season. And so moving forward, it's very obvious that this team has to find a competent coach, especially when you have so many young players on this roster continue to develop as a unit. You cannot start steering them in the wrong direction, and hopefully they continue to grow as a unit, because I'm looking at some of these teams in the Eastern Conference, and yeah, it's about to be really thick in the East, at least in my opinion, in the next 2 to 3 years.
Last night didn't feel like a fluke, which in Minnesota is a very welcome change indeed. So Scotty, for you, are the Timberwolves starting to meet the expectations we all had for them really the last kind of 2 seasons?
Coming in at number 3, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, an organization that has seen no postseason play in over a decade, finally made the decision to go after a star athlete in Jimmy Butler by trading away some of their young talent. And with the acquisition of Jimmy Butler and some other veteran pieces such as Jeff Teague, Taj Gibson, and Jamal Crawford, you would assume the transition from being a rookie to a great player with some of their young talents such as Andrew Wiggins, Tyus Jones, and Karl-Anthony Towns, that curve will be a little bit more easier to turn. But for whatever reason, this is an organization that has consistently struggled throughout the entire season to finally have some footing in the Western Conference. And even though we all know the Western Conference was a little bit more tougher this season, when you look at what happened in the Western Conference with all the injuries such as DeMarcus Cousins going down, Paul Millsap was nearly out the entire year, Kawhi Leonard only playing 9 games, you would assume that the Minnesota Timberwolves would be able to have a spot in the playoffs locked up by now. But here we are, fewer than 5 games left in the regular season, and the Minnesota Timberwolves postseason hopes are still not secure, as they have the exact same record as the Denver Nuggets with the 9th seed. But what makes things even more frustrating is that offensively this team is fine. It's the defensive side where this team struggles throughout the entire season. So who exactly are we going to blame, because it just makes no sense that this team is struggling this much this year. Some people are pointing at Thibodeau, as the team has consistently struggled defensively, and Thibodeau has gotten his name throughout the NBA over the last decade due to his defensive mentality and coaching teams to defensive excellence. Some people are looking at Karl-Anthony Towns for his lack of development and growth. Some people are looking at the bench, even though Jamal Crawford is still producing at somewhat of a level. He's obviously not the same player that he once was, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. Andrew Wiggins has just been one of the most disappointing first overall picks I've seen in the last 10 years. And this year, it's extremely obvious. Over the last 3 years, many people, including myself, were giving Andrew Wiggins some time, but now when you're in this situation, you have to capitalize on the opportunity that is given to you. And when it comes to Andrew Wiggins, even though so many people in the beginning of his career hyped him up so much so, we are now at a point where we have removed a lot of the responsibilities and the expectations from Wiggins. Entering this season, no one was expecting Wiggins to be a playmaker because he received Jeff Teague. No one was expecting Wiggins to be an elite level defender anymore because that's the reason why you got Jimmy Butler. And with the addition of Jimmy Butler, the improvement of Karl-Anthony Towns, and the rest of the supporting cast, you would assume that Andrew Wiggins, even if he is going to take a dip in his scoring output, he should be much more efficient than he has been over his career. But unfortunately, that's not true either. For whatever reason, Andrew Wiggins, as a player who has been majority of the season the third best option on this team offensively, consistently struggles to find some type of stroke throughout the entire year. Add that to the fact that Wiggins is attempting just as many, if not more, shots than both Karl-Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler, and the fact that he's not even averaging 20 points is definitely concerning. But what really stands out is how poorly Wiggins has played over the last 6 to 8 games, as they really needed to win these games to secure their spot in the playoffs, because again, they're literally losing games at a rate they don't need to be losing them. And within the last 8 games, we're talking about Wiggins is not averaging 20 points anymore. Wiggins is shooting below 40% from the field, below 30% from behind the arc, and shooting below 60% from the free throw line. So when it comes to Andrew Wiggins, his lack of development this year has been astonishing. It's been eye-opening, and I hope this is just another great example of people need to stop comparing these young players to all-time greats, because sometimes they're just not going to be that great of a player. But even if we strip those expectations from Wiggins, this year has just been a massive disappointment, and if the Timberwolves do not make the playoffs, he's definitely going to be the first person to blame.
I ain't even mad about it. I actually kind of love it. Stay asleep on the Pistons. However, that being said, after the Pistons beat the Celtics yesterday, I do think some people are starting to wake up and just realize that the Pistons are just a good team this year.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Detroit Pistons, and I hate to say this, but not really. I told you so. The Detroit Pistons enter this year, for whatever reason, had some type of expectations to make the playoffs, but that didn't really happen. Just like I said in the beginning of the season, Reggie Jackson was going to suffer from an injury, which he did. Just like I said in the beginning of the season, Stanley Johnson was going to be terrible from the field. And just like I said in the beginning of the season, regardless of the development of Andre Drummond and his passing abilities, he's not a good enough player to submit a playoff spot even in a weaker Eastern Conference. But the one thing that really stood out to me, and who we have to blame for this disappointment this year, is what Stan Van Gundy has done to this organization. Because Stan Van Gundy, along with a couple of other coaches in the NBA, for whatever reason, they feel as if they're coaching their previous teams from 10 years ago. I'm sorry to tell you this, Stan Van Gundy, but Drummond is not Dwight Howard, Reggie Jackson is not Jameer Nelson, and when you traded for Blake Griffin, I guess he's supposed to be Hedo Turkoglu, but you've been better off turning Tobias Harris into that, because Blake Griffin doesn't shoot threes nowhere near as great as Tobias Harris or Hedo Turkoglu. And speaking of that trade, going after Blake Griffin to give up Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley made no sense. And for people out there who kept saying, well, Tobias Harris isn't as good as Blake Griffin, I definitely disagree, especially in today's NBA, and especially in the system in which they're going to run on that organization. I'm looking at this team, I'm looking at this roster, and I'm pretty sure they'll have some higher hopes next year, but it doesn't make any sense that they went in that direction, and it's going to hurt them for years and years to come. But take it away, Zach Lee.
This team is trash. This team is trash.
Considering the circumstances, Carmelo Anthony is finally in a position where he's going to be able to legitimately compete for a championship, and I think that's something that his talent demands. This is
literally no other team is as disappointing as the Thunder are this year, because you would assume with a team that features Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Steven Adams, Carmelo Anthony, and notice the order that I put that in, because Carmelo Anthony by the end of the season not better than Steven Adams no more. I don't care what anyone says, but when you look at this roster with that much talent on the team, you would assume that this would be an organization that would be top of the Western Conference, an organization that may not beat the Golden State Warriors or the Houston Rockets, but should at least compete with those teams. And for whatever reason, this is an organization, fewer than 5 games left in the regular season, have still not secured their playoff spot. So that alone makes him the most disappointing team. But once we dig a little bit more deeper to this roster, we really start to see where this team just goes south. Russell Westbrook, I know many people just love the fact that he averages those triple doubles, and he's almost close to doing that again. If those numbers are not translating to wins, and if he cannot adjust when he has talent around him, I'm sorry people, but none of that stuff really matters anymore. Then you have Paul George, who even though defensively is playing really great this year, but on the offensive end, he is the definition of inconsistency. And you would assume that Paul George's inconsistent ways will start to deteriorate because he's on a team with Russell Westbrook, who is taking care of majority of the offensive load, but no, Paul George still has nights where he goes like 0 for 7 from behind the arc, and it's just ridiculous. But the two people that just stand out the most, and it's just ridiculous how disappointing this season was for these two people. One is Billy Donovan, who is easily, I thought about this for a while, but no, I'm just going to say it now. Billy Donovan is the worst coach in the NBA. There's absolutely no way that you can have this much talent on the roster and not construct a more competent offensive scheme around these players. I literally watch these players come down the court, ISO for a good 7 seconds, and if they can't find a shot, they just pass it to someone else and they'll ISO for another 7 seconds and then chuck up a shot. It is amazing to me that Billy Donovan is allowed to just do that for an entire 82 game season. Second person though, and this is really just amazing to me, Carmelo Anthony, who's having a career low despite the fact that he's on a roster where he is the 4th best player. I will repeat that again, the 4th best player. We are now at a point where we're expecting Carmelo Anthony not to rebound, not to facilitate, not to defend. Matter of fact, Carmelo, you don't even have to create your own shots. Just spot up and shoot, and you still are unable to do that. But the thing that's even more frustrating about Carmelo Anthony is that we tried to lower the bar even further for him, and he just said, no, I got that. Because in the beginning of the season and in the middle of the season, media members along with many fans just thought to themselves, you know what, Carmelo, you might not even be able to keep up with some of the starters. You know, they like to move up and down. You may not be able to do your thing, and plus, the way you love to score, you probably better suited to come off the bench.
Question is,
Who, me?
Oh. I guess that answers that part.
I mean, I don't know where that started, where that came from. Hey, P, they said I got to come off the bench.
The audacity of someone who's never won a championship, never been in an MVP conversation, a player who is at the end of his career, he's now laughing at the idea that he may have to be a bench player to better suit the situation that he is now in. Are you serious? You can't be serious. Go on the bench, man. Just go on the bench, Carmelo. Let's call it a career and go on the bench. So when we talk about disappointment, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they definitely take the cake. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up. If you want to watch more content, hit the subscribe button. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Peace.